The alien fleet looms on the distant horizon, 200 colossal warships eclipsing the sun, weapons bristling like metallic forests. Captain Jake Morrison nearly spits out his morning coffee. These invaders can crush worlds, they claim, but they can't even navigate Jupiter's moons without crashing into asteroids. Earth's response? Laugh. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the viewport of Earth Defense Station Liberty, his coffee steaming in his hand as he gazed out at the darkness of space. Standard Lunar 3427 had been, until today, just another uneventful year of his 3-year posting. His job was simple: track space debris, ensure orbital safety, and occasionally coordinate with the other defense platforms in the Sol system. He took a sip from his mug, the familiar taste grounding him in what would soon become the most extraordinary day in human history. "Captain, we're receiving anomalous readings from the edge of the system," Lieutenant Amy Carter called from her communication station. Her voice remained steady, professional, though her eyes widened as she processed the incoming data. "Energy signatures unlike anything we've ever recorded. They're massive." Jake strode over, placing his coffee beside her terminal. "Show me." The display illuminated with a cascading series of numbers and spectral analyses. Whatever was out there, it was unlike anything in their defense database. "Contact Platform Washington," Jake ordered. "I want Colonel Rodriguez's assessment." Within moments, the stern face of Colonel Sam Rodriguez appeared on the main screen. Beside him stood Lieutenant Chris Baker, Washington's tactical officer. Both wore expressions of contained alarm. "We're seeing it too, Morrison," Rodriguez confirmed. "Baker's already running diagnostics on the railgun systems. Whatever's coming, we'll be ready." Jake nodded. "Keep me posted." The alert came at dawn. 200 ships, each the size of a small city, dropped out of hyperspace at the solar system's edge. They moved with ponderous grace, their hulls gleaming as they navigated around Jupiter's moons. Jake watched, eyes narrowed, as the fleet seemed to struggle with the basic orbital mechanics of the gas giant's satellite system. "They're taking forever to maneuver," he murmured, more to himself than to his crew. "Look at that turning radius." Lieutenant Carter suppressed a smile. "Should I hail them, sir?" Before Jake could respond, the main screen flickered to life. A crystalline being appeared, its faceted form glowing with internal light. Multiple appendages moved in rhythmic patterns as it addressed them. "Humans of Earth, I am Admiral Zixther Thethera of the Galactic Confederation's First Contact Fleet. Your primitive civilization now stands before the might of our empire. Surrender your world and bow before us, or face annihilation." Jake studied the alien commander, noting the pompous tone, the expectation of fear. He glanced at Lieutenant Carter, who was struggling to maintain her professional demeanor. "Open a channel," Jake said, straightening his uniform. When Carter nodded, he cleared his throat. "Admiral Zixther," he began, deliberately mispronouncing the name. "Nice ships you've got there. Do they steer? Or do you just aim and hope for the best? I couldn't help but notice you nearly scraped the paint off 3 of them maneuvering around Europa." Silence followed. Jake could almost feel the shock radiating from the alien fleet. Admiral Zixther's crystalline form seemed to vibrate with indignation when he responded. "You dare mock the Eternal Dominion? Perhaps a demonstration is in order." The screen split to show a massive asteroid, designated 77A, floating peacefully in space. The largest of the alien vessels rotated slowly, aligning what appeared to be its primary weapon. A series of energy conduits began to glow along its hull. "Behold the power of the Confederation," Zixther intoned. "This weapon requires only 15 minutes to charge before it can vaporize this asteroid. Then, you will understand your insignificance." Jake watched patiently as the weapon charged, its glow intensifying. After exactly 15 minutes, a dazzling beam shot forth, striking the asteroid. In a spectacular display, The 2-mile rock disintegrated into space dust. "Behold our power," Zixter declared. "Resist and perish." Jake exchanged a look with Colonel Rodriguez, whose face had appeared on a secondary screen. The colonel appeared wholly unimpressed. "Lieutenant Baker," Rodriguez said, "target those 3 similar-sized asteroids at coordinates 42-1897. Baker's fingers flew across his console. "Targets acquired, sir." "Fire at will." Washington's kinetic rail system hummed to life. With a series of rapid bursts, each lasting barely a fifth of a second, 3 asteroids identical to the one Zixter had destroyed exploded into fragments. The entire process took 6 seconds. Laughter erupted on both Liberty and Washington. Jake didn't try to suppress his crew's reaction. In fact, he joined in, chuckling as he addressed the alien admiral once more. 15 minutes versus 6 seconds. Admiral, that's what we call efficiency around here. The alien fleet fell silent. When Zixter reappeared on screen, his crystalline form seemed dimmer somehow, though his voice remained imperious. "Your primitive railguns, how do they deliver such power without massive charging sequences? This defies our understanding." Colonel Rodriguez leaned forward in his command chair. "We store energy in capacitors and release it instantly," he explained casually. "Basic physics, really. First-year engineering stuff on Earth." Zixter's form flickered momentarily, but he recovered his composure. "Do not be overconfident, humans. Our next demonstration will prove your inferiority beyond doubt." The alien fleet began to reorganize. 6 massive warships breaking formation to perform what was clearly meant to be an impressive synchronized maneuver. Jake and his crew watched in growing amusement as the ships lumbered through space, their turns wide and ungainly. Twice, they nearly collided with each other. When they finally aligned to target another asteroid, the Eternal Dominion's weapon again required its full charging sequence before firing. Jake couldn't resist. "Do you folks practice fleet drills, or is this your first day in the simulator?" Sam's voice came through next. "Maybe your protocols need updating. Our Academy cadets could fly circles around your formation." The shared feed between Liberty and Washington showed both crews laughing openly now. The mockery was unmistakable, and Zixter's crystalline form seemed to dim further in response. The Admiral abruptly cut the transmission. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Zixter convened an emergency holographic meeting with the Confederation Council. His reputation, indeed, the entire First Contact Fleet standing, was at risk. "These humans," he reported, his tone a mixture of bewilderment and anger. "They laugh at our might. They mock our displays of power. Their primitive technology somehow outperforms our advanced systems in efficiency, if not in scale." The council, composed of representatives from 17 species, murmured among themselves. Finally, a spectral elder spoke. "This approach has failed. We must demonstrate our superiority through knowledge, technology, and diplomacy instead of raw power. We mandate a cultural exchange delegation." Zixter selected his delegation carefully. High Philosopher Venturus, an ethereal scholar of unparalleled wisdom. Master Engineer Clank 7, the Confederation's premier construct engineer. And General Thmor, a Gorthani military strategist whose tactics had conquered a dozen worlds. When informed of this development, Earth assembled its own delegation. But rather than sending military officers or diplomats, they chose 3 civilians. Dr. Ben Murphy, a veterinarian from Montana curious about alien biology. Maria Gonzalez, an 8th-grade science teacher skilled at explaining complex concepts. And Pete Johnson, a 73-year-old retired mechanic who had conducted fusion experiments in his garage. A small shuttle transported the human delegation to the Eternal Dominion. As they docked, Admiral Zixter personally greeted them, his crystalline form restored to full brilliance. "Welcome aboard," he said, his tone formal. "Prepare to witness the superiority of Confederation knowledge and culture." The first exchange took place in a vast, echoing chamber aboard the alien flagship. High Philosopher Venturas, a being of almost pure energy, contained within a translucent membrane, hovered before the human delegation. For 20 minutes, he intoned the 17 fundamental laws of galactic order, his voice reverberating with the weight of millennia. He spoke of hierarchy, protocol, and tradition, how the universe itself demanded structure and obedience to cosmic principles. When he finished, he turned expectantly to the humans. Dr. Murphy raised his hand tentatively. "I have a question, if I may." Venturas inclined his luminous form. "Speak, primitive one. What if a species simply doesn't follow these laws? Who enforces them?" Murphy asked, his tone genuinely curious. "In my practice, I've observed that biology often finds its own path, regardless of what we consider laws." The philosopher floated silently for several moments. Then, his voice noticeably less confident, he replied, "No one has ever questioned the immutable laws. They simply are." "But that's not really an answer," Murphy persisted. "If I tell my dog that universal law says he shouldn't chase squirrels, he's still going to chase squirrels unless I enforce the rule somehow." Laughter from the human delegation undermined the chamber's solemnity. Venturas's form pulsed with what might have been embarrassment. "I must meditate upon this question," he announced, before drifting away to a private alcove. The second exchange took place in the heart of the Eternal Dominion. Master Engineer Clank 7, a towering mechanical construct of gleaming metal and pulsing energy conduits, led the humans through the ship's massive engine room. Office building-sized fusion reactors hummed behind 17 layers of safety barriers. "Behold," Clank 7 intoned, "the culmination of 17 centuries of refinement. These reactors generate power sufficient to move worlds, protected by the most sophisticated containment fields in the galaxy." Pete Johnson, his weathered hands stuffed in the pockets of his overalls, walked slowly around the nearest reactor. He peered at conduits, studied pressure gauges, and finally shook his head. "Mind if I make an observation?" he asked, not waiting for permission. "This whole setup is over-engineered, way too complicated." Clank 7's optical sensors flashed. "Explain." Pete pulled a small notebook from his pocket and sketched a diagram. "If you reshape the magnetic containment field like this," he said, drawing a modified torus, "and feed plasma from 3 inlets instead of 1, you'll triple the output with half the hardware." The construct scanned the sketch, its processors whirring. "Impossible. Your primitive design cannot—" It stopped mid-sentence. "Running simulations." For several minutes, Clank 7 stood motionless, internal calculations processing Pete's suggestion. Finally, it spoke again, its mechanical voice somehow conveying astonishment. "Your design functions. It would indeed improve efficiency by 287%. The construct's massive frame seemed to slump slightly. "How did you determine this?" Pete shrugged. "Been working on fusion in my garage for 30 years. When you don't have unlimited resources, you learn to keep things simple." The third exchange occurred in the Dominion's Tactical Center. General Thmor, a massive, armored Gorthani warrior, unfurled ancient scrolls across a holographic table. His voice rumbled with pride as he explained the Crimson Dawn formation, a 5,000-year-old tactic for deploying 10,000 ships in layered arrays. "With this formation," he growled, "we can encircle any enemy fleet, regardless of their numbers or strategy. It has never failed in 5 millennia of galactic warfare." Maria Gonzalez studied the holographic display, her head tilted thoughtfully. When the general finished, she raised her hand. "Why don't you simply flank them?" she asked. Thmor blinked his 4 eyes in confusion. "Flank?" "Yes, like this." Maria rearranged the holographic ships. "Instead of this elaborate encirclement that takes hours to form, just send a group around the side while engaging from the front. My eighth graders use basic flanking and capture the flag, and win every time. Thmor stared at the revised formation. But the sacred scrolls make no mention of flanking. Maybe that's why it works, Maria suggested. If everyone follows the same ancient tactics, they never think to counter something new. The general's massive form seemed to deflate. In 5,000 years, he admitted. No one has ever suggested deviation from the scrolls. In his command center, Admiral Zixter watched these exchanges with mounting horror. His greatest minds, the philosopher, the engineer, the general, all humiliated by humans who, by Confederation standards, were wholly unremarkable. A veterinarian, an elderly mechanic, a schoolteacher. The Confederation Council's holographic presence loomed behind him, their disappointment palpable. Zixter knew he needed to salvage the situation, and the Confederation's pride. A formal challenge, he announced. 3 contests to determine, once and for all, which civilization truly excels. Battle simulation, technological innovation, and diplomatic negotiation, these shall be our proving grounds. Earth accepted the challenge without hesitation. The first contest, battle simulation, took place aboard a ship-sized war computer on the Eternal Dominion. Holographic displays rendered a vast starfield where the competition would unfold. The parameters were clear. The alien side would command a fleet of 500 modern ships with advanced AI, flawless formation, and superior shields. The humans would control a decaying fleet of just 50 outdated vessels. The human champion was Captain Ryan Torres, a weekend gamer and National Guard reservist with 0 experience in actual galactic warfare. General Thmor expected a swift victory. The simulation began. The alien fleet followed textbook Crimson Dawn formation, a full frontal assault designed to overwhelm the opponent. Ryan, however, immediately scattered his fleet, using nearby asteroids as cover and engaging in what he later described as basic hit-and-run tactics from any decent real-time strategy game. By attacking from multiple vectors, forcing the alien fleet to constantly reorganize their rigid formation, Ryan systematically dismantled their advantages. Within 2 hours, the holographic display showed the complete destruction of the alien armada. Not a single human ship had been lost. General Thmor stood frozen, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. His ancient formation, the pride of Gorthani military tradition, had been utterly shredded by what humans considered elementary tactics. The second contest focused on technological innovation. Design a galaxy-wide, faster-than-light communication system. The Alien Consortium, comprised of 17 species, presented a complex multidimensional quantum entanglement network requiring exotic particles and mathematical principles so advanced they needed 4 hours just to explain the concept. Their proposal spanned 3 massive screens of equations and specifications. The human challenger was Dr. Nancy White, an MIT graduate student who brought only a spiral notebook and a piece of chalk. After the aliens finished their presentation, she stepped forward. "Have you tried making quantum particles bigger?" she asked. The alien scientists exchanged confused glances. Dr. Vexar of the Crystalline Collective spoke first. "Quantum effects only manifest at subatomic scales. This is elementary physics." Nancy smiled and sketched a design on her notebook. "Not necessarily. If you create a macro-quantum oscillator with these specifications, you can maintain quantum coherence at visible scales." She handed the sketch to Dr. Vexar. "It's basically just a resonance chamber with specialized field harmonics." The alien scientists huddled around the notebook, running calculations. After several minutes, Dr. Vexar looked up, his crystalline form pulsing with what could only be described as shock. "Her macro-quantum field harmonics," he announced, "would outperform our entangled network by 300%, with 1/10 the infrastructure." The revelation left the alien delegation in stunned silence. Their enormous, unified field generator design, the pride of their scientific community, had been rendered obsolete by a sketch on a human's notebook. The third and final contest involved diplomatic negotiation. The scenario: a complex trade dispute among 17 species over mining rights on Epsilon 56b, with each faction presenting conflicting demands related to environmental protection, ancestral site preservation, and profit sharing. The alien representative, Ambassador Silk, presented a 400-page treaty drafted over 3 weeks, detailing endless stipulations and clauses. The document was a masterpiece of bureaucratic thoroughness, accounting for every possible contingency. Earth's representative was Mayor Tom Bradley, from a small town in Kansas, known for his common-sense solutions and weekly town hall barbecues. When presented with the treaty, he set it aside without reading it. "Before we dive into the paperwork," he said, "I'd like to ask a simple question. What does everyone actually want from this mining operation?" The delegates exchanged confused glances before beginning to list their concerns: jobs for their people, revenue sharing, ecosystem preservation, respect for cultural heritage sites. Tom nodded thoughtfully, then made an unexpected proposal. "Let's have a barbecue." Hours later, the Eternal Dominion's conference deck had been transformed. Each species brought their native cuisine, creating an impromptu, intergalactic potluck over shared food. Tom guided the conversation toward practical solutions. "What if we designate specific zones for mining?" he suggested, sketching a rough map on a napkin. "Preserve these areas for cultural sites, and split the profits according to this sliding scale. Everyone gets something they need. No one gets everything they want. That's the essence of compromise." By the end of the meal, the delegates had hammered out a simple agreement. 3 pages, written in plain language, with no hidden clauses or unnecessary complexities. The 400-page treaty was ceremonially shredded as the new accord was signed to unanimous approval. Admiral Zixter reviewed the results of the 3 challenges with a sense of profound dismay. His philosopher, his engineer, his general, all defeated by humans using what they called common sense. His crystalline form had dimmed considerably, reflecting his inner turmoil. Gathering his command staff, he made a difficult admission. "Our centuries of complexity, our traditions have blinded us. We have mistaken elaboration for advancement, protocol for wisdom. We must learn to think differently." In the days that followed, a remarkable transformation began. Pete Johnson worked alongside Master Engineer Clank 7, redesigning the Dominion's fusion reactors. The massive chambers that once housed building-sized reaction cores now contained compact units based on Pete's garage experiments. Reactor efficiency increased by 70%, while size decreased proportionally. Dr. Ben Murphy instructed alien medics from 17 species in universal principles of anatomy. "All living things, regardless of form," he explained, "need to transport nutrients, repair damage, and maintain some form of homeostasis." The alien doctors, accustomed to memorizing thousands of specific procedures for each species, began performing cross-species triage based on common veterinary tenets. Maria Gonzalez led Gorthani generals, ethereal strategists, and aquatic tacticians in Capture the Flag exercises on the Dominion's holodeck. She taught them to recognize enemy patterns, execute flanking maneuvers, and adapt to changing battlefield conditions. The alien commanders stumbled initially, then began to grasp the flexible thinking that humans took for granted. Back on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison and Colonel Sam Rodriguez coordinated joint patrols with reconfigured alien warships. The once massive vessels had been redesigned following human principles: smaller, faster, built with modular components that could be easily replaced or modified. Lieutenant Amy Carter helped streamline alien communications protocols, eliminating redundant channels, implementing direct call signs, and simplifying encryption methods. "If it takes more than 3 steps to send a message," she advised. It's too complicated. Among the alien officers, these changes sparked internal conflict. Some elders spoke of betraying tradition and diluting their heritage, while younger officers embraced the innovations. Admiral Zixter found himself mediating these disputes, his own journey from arrogance to humility serving as an example. 3 months after the first contact, the Confederation Council convened aboard Earth's Liberty Station. Admiral Zixter, his crystalline form now glowing with renewed brilliance, addressed the assembled dignitaries from both civilizations. Humanity, he began, his tone formal but warm. With your common sense, you have shown us a new path. What we mistook for primitive simplicity was, in fact, elegant efficiency. We request an ongoing partnership, not as conquerors or the conquered, but as equals seeking mutual growth. The response was unanimous approval. A joint Earth Confederation symposium was scheduled, the Galactic Academy of Adaptive Innovation, dedicated to teaching human common sense to alien species across thousands of worlds. In the days that followed, a new normal began to emerge. Captain Jake Morrison, sipping coffee on Liberty's observation deck, smiled as a sleek, hybrid human-alien scout ship glided past. He tapped out a message to Lieutenant Carter. Bet they never thought coffee could be so dangerous. Pete Johnson found his skills in high demand. In an alien dockyard, surrounded by insectoid engineers a fraction of his size, he cheerfully demonstrated welding techniques as the tiny technicians watched in fascination. Maria Gonzalez's Galactic Battlefield Simulation Lab became a mandatory stop for alien military cadets. The once rigid commanders now called out coordinate moves and flanking maneuvers with enthusiasm, embracing the fluidity of human tactics. Mayor Tom Bradley presided over a weekly interspecies barbecue on the newly constructed Martian terrace. Diplomats who once communicated only through formal protocols now laughed over shared stories and exchanged recipes for their native cuisines. Admiral Zixter, recording his personal log in the privacy of his quarters, reflected on the transformation. Day 97 of cultural exchange. Confederation performance metrics have improved by 400% across all sectors. We have learned that simplicity can equal power, that efficiency outweighs scale. These Earthlings may appear primitive by our traditional measures, but they have taught us to question everything. In many ways, our civilization is being reborn, as ambassadors prepared to depart for distant worlds, bringing human wisdom to the far corners of the galaxy. Zixter received a cryptic message from Captain Morrison. You haven't met the Texans yet. The Admiral watched as a new human starship streaked toward the Eternal Dominion, a hint that Earth's next surprise was yet to come. Captain Jake Morrison had never expected to become humanity's first line of defense against alien invasion. 3 years ago, when he'd accepted the posting to Liberty Station, his primary concern had been the mind-numbing boredom of tracking space debris. Now, as he stood in the crowded observation lounge watching human engineers crawl over alien technology, he couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. Something amusing, Captain. Lieutenant Amy Carter appeared at his side, datapad in hand. Just thinking about how quickly things change, Jake replied. 3 months ago, that fleet was here to conquer us. Now they're asking for fishing tips and barbecue recipes. Amy laughed. The cultural exchange teams can barely keep up with the requests. Did you hear about Pete? The engineering guild on Proxima Centauri has named a fusion principle after him, the Johnson efficiency theorem. Good for him. If anyone deserves recognition, it's that old tinkerer. Jake sipped his coffee, his expression growing more thoughtful. Any word from Washington about the joint patrol schedule? Colonel Rodriguez sent an updated rotation. We're paired with the Crystalline Cruiser next week, the one Captain Zerla commands. Jake nodded. The Crystalline Captain had been among the first to embrace human tactical innovations, earning her both promotion and suspicion among the more traditional elements of her species. She's a good officer. Adapts quickly. Their conversation was interrupted by a proximity alert. A sleek craft, clearly of alien design, but modified with human aesthetics, decelerated toward Liberty's docking bay. That's Admiral Zixter's personal shuttle, Amy noted, checking her datapad. He wasn't scheduled to visit today. When you're an admiral, schedules become suggestions, Jake replied. Let's go welcome our guest. They arrived at the docking bay just as Zixter emerged from his shuttle. The admiral's crystalline form pulsed with vibrant energy, a stark contrast to the dimmed state he'd exhibited during their first encounters. Behind him followed a delegation of varied alien species, each carrying what appeared to be ceremonial objects. Captain Morrison, Zixter greeted him, his voice resonating with genuine warmth. Forgive the unannounced visit. The council insisted this matter could not wait. Jake straightened. No apology necessary, Admiral. Liberty Station is always open to our allies. Allies, Zixter repeated, the word carrying weight beyond its simple meaning. Yes, that is precisely why we have come. The Admiral gestured, and one of his delegation stepped forward, a towering insectoid being bearing an intricately carved crystal sphere. The Confederation Council has deliberated at length, Zixter continued. For the first time in our 50,000-year history, we have voted unanimously to extend an offer of full alliance, not mere cultural exchange or technological cooperation, but true partnership. Jake blinked in surprise. According to what they'd learned of Confederation politics, such unanimity was unprecedented. The sphere contains a complete star map of Confederation space, Zixter explained. 17,000 worlds, all now open to human exploration and settlement. In exchange, we ask only that Earth continue to share its wisdom, its common sense, as you call it. Jake glanced at Amy, who appeared equally stunned. This was far beyond their authority to accept, but the gesture's significance wasn't lost on either of them. Admiral, I'm honored by your offer, Jake said carefully. But this will require consultation with Earth's governing council. Of course, Zixter agreed. We anticipated as much. The delegation will remain aboard Liberty while your leaders deliberate. In the meantime, perhaps we might continue our informal cultural exchanges? Jake smiled, recognizing the gleam in the Admiral's crystalline structure. Let me guess, you've heard about poker night in the officers' lounge. The game of bluffing and probability assessment. Yes, most intriguing. General Thmore believes it will improve tactical thinking. I'm sure he does, Jake replied, suppressing a laugh. The Gorthani general had already developed a reputation for aggressive betting. You're all welcome to join us. Later that evening, the officers' lounge presented a sight unprecedented in human history. 5 alien species gathered around a poker table with a half-dozen humans. Chips stacked before them, cards held in appendages of varying shapes and sizes. Colonel Rodriguez, visiting from Washington, leaned toward Jake. 20 credits says the crystalline folds first. They're too transparent, literally. Jake shook his head. Never bet against Admiral Zixter. He's adapting faster than any of them. True to Jake's prediction, the Admiral played his cards close to his crystalline chest, winning 3 hands in succession with well-timed bluffs. The humans at the table exchanged impressed glances. Zixter was learning faster than anticipated. Tell me, Captain, Zixter said, during a break in the game. Does Earth truly have no unified military command? Each nation maintains independent forces. Jake nodded. We cooperate when necessary. But yes, defense remains largely national. Fascinating inefficiency, the Admiral mused. Yet somehow it works. Competition breeds innovation. Colonel Rodriguez interjected. Different approaches, different solutions. When we share what works best, everyone benefits. Zixter's form pulsed thoughtfully. Perhaps that explains much about human ingenuity. Your species never settled on a single, correct way to solve problems. The conversation was interrupted by Lieutenant Baker, who entered the lounge with urgent strides. "Colonel, Captain, priority message from Earth Command. They're requesting immediate conference." Jake and Sam exchanged concerned glances before excusing themselves from the game. In Liberty's secure communications room, the stern face of General Helena Chen appeared on screen. "Gentlemen," she began without preamble, "I understand we have unexpected guests." "Yes, General," Jake confirmed. "Admiral Zixter and a Confederation delegation arrived with a formal alliance proposal. They're waiting for—" "I'm aware of the offer," General Chen interrupted. "The Security Council has reviewed it and reached a decision. I'm en route to Liberty now to deliver our response personally. ETA 3 hours. Until then, keep our guests entertained." The screen went dark before either officer could respond. "That was abrupt," Sam remarked. "Any idea which way the council's leaning?" Jake shook his head. "Helena's never been one to telegraph her punches. We'll find out when she gets here." 3 hours to kill, Sam sighed. "Back to poker?" "Might as well. Just don't lose your shirt to the Admiral. I think he's counting cards." When they returned to the lounge, they found the game had evolved. Zixter and the alien delegation were now engrossed in learning a new human pastime: karaoke. Lieutenant Amy Carter stood beside a makeshift stage, patiently explaining the concept to a bewildered Gorthani warrior. "You follow the words on the screen," she demonstrated, "and sing along with the music." The massive alien blinked all 4 eyes in confusion. "This is recreation. Purposely vocalizing imperfectly to recorded instruments?" "Exactly," Amy beamed. "It's not about being good, it's about having fun." Jake leaned against the bar, watching as the warrior tentatively approached the microphone. "This should be interesting." Sam nodded, accepting a drink from the bartender. 5 credits says he picks a love ballad. The Gorthani surprised them both by selecting Eye of the Tiger, his rumbling voice completely overwhelming the backing track. What the performance lacked in melody, it made up for in enthusiasm. By the chorus, the entire lounge had joined in, humans and aliens alike belting out the lyrics with abandon. Jake couldn't help but laugh. If someone had told me 3 months ago that I'd be watching a 4-eyed alien warrior singing Survivor hits, I'd have recommended psychiatric evaluation. "The universe is full of surprises," Sam agreed. "Speaking of which, here comes another one." Jake followed Sam's gaze to the lounge entrance, where Admiral Zixter stood, conversing with a human Jake didn't recognize. A middle-aged man in casual civilian clothes, with a weathered face and calloused hands. "Who's that with the Admiral?" Jake asked. "No idea," Sam replied. "Not military, that's for sure." Their curiosity was soon satisfied as Zixter approached, the stranger in tow. "Captain Morrison, Colonel Rodriguez," the Admiral began. "May I introduce Marcus Reeves? He arrived on the supply shuttle an hour ago." The man extended a hand. "Pleasure to meet you both. I understand you've been keeping our friends entertained." Jake shook the offered hand, noting the firm grip. "We're doing our best, Mr. Reeves. May I ask your function here?" "I'm the Security Council's advance representative," Reeves explained. "General Chen asked me to prepare for her arrival." Something in the man's easy manner struck Jake as unusual for a government official. "You're not military," he observed. "Former Ranger. But no, I'm not with the service anymore. These days I run a ranch in Montana. The council thought a civilian perspective might be valuable." Sam raised an eyebrow. "A rancher? No offense, but why would the Security Council send—" "Because humans are baffling," Admiral Zixter interrupted, his tone amused. "Just when we believe we understand your species, you introduce another variable. A military leader sends a livestock manager as her advance representative. Brilliantly unpredictable." Reeves chuckled. "I wouldn't go that far, Admiral. But I do have some experience with different cultures getting along. Or not. My ranch borders 3 tribal nations' territories. You learn to navigate differences. Before Jake could inquire further, his communicator chirped, "Morrison here." "Captain," Lieutenant Baker's voice came through. "General Chen's shuttle has accelerated its approach. New ETA 45 minutes. Jake frowned. "That's a significant adjustment." "Yes, sir. She's burning a lot of fuel to get here faster." "Acknowledged. Prepare for her arrival." Jake turned to the others. "It seems the general is in a hurry." Reeves nodded, unsurprised. "Helena never was one for waiting. Shall we move this gathering to somewhere more appropriate for a formal reception?" Jake led the group to Liberty's main conference room, a spacious chamber with Earth visible through a massive viewport. Station staff hurriedly prepared the space, arranging seating to accommodate both human and alien physiologies. As they waited, Reeves engaged Zixter in casual conversation about Confederation governance. Jake observed their interaction with interest. The rancher displayed an unexpected diplomatic touch, asking insightful questions about the council's structure and decision-making processes. 17 species, each with different biological imperatives and cultural values. Reeves mused, "How do you reach consensus?" "Traditionally, through exhaustive debate and multiple levels of review," Zixter explained. "A typical trade agreement might require 50 sessions spanning several Earth years. And yet you unanimously approved this alliance proposal in, what, days?" "3 of your Earth days," Zixter confirmed. "Unprecedented in our history." Reeves nodded thoughtfully. "That tells me something important about how seriously the Confederation takes this partnership." The Admiral's crystalline form brightened. "Your species has challenged our most fundamental assumptions. We cannot afford to respond slowly." Their conversation was interrupted by Lieutenant Carter's announcement. "General Chen's shuttle is docking now." Jake straightened his uniform. "Places, everyone. Let's make this official." General Helena Chen entered the conference room with the brisk efficiency that had become her trademark during 3 decades of military service. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her uniform immaculate. Behind her followed a small entourage of aides carrying secure tablets. "Admiral Zixter," she greeted the crystalline being with a precise nod. "I apologize for the delay. Earth's governance can be deliberative." "No apology necessary, General," Zixter replied. "The Confederation understands the complexities of consensus building." Chen's gaze swept the room, noting each person present before settling on Reeves. "Marcus, I see you've made yourself at home. Just getting acquainted." "Helena," he replied with casual familiarity that made Jake raise an eyebrow. "The Admiral and I were discussing governance structures." "Indeed." The General's expression revealed nothing as she took her place at the head of the conference table. "Then, let us proceed with governance in action. Admiral Zixter, I am authorized to present Earth's formal response to your alliance proposal." The room fell silent as Chen activated a holographic display. A rotating Earth appeared above the table, gradually joined by symbols representing the 17 Confederation worlds. "The Security Council, with unanimous consent from all member nations, accepts the Confederation's offer of alliance," Chen announced, "with certain conditions." Jake detected a subtle shift in Zixter's crystalline structure. Tension, perhaps, or surprise. "We propose a phased implementation," Chen continued, "beginning with joint defense patrols, followed by scientific exchanges, culminating in open migration after a 5-year evaluation period." She gestured, and the hologram shifted to display a timeline. "Additionally, we request establishment of a joint governing body, equal representation from both humanity and the Confederation, to oversee the Alliance's development." Zixter studied the proposal, his crystalline form pulsing slowly. "Your terms are unexpectedly modest, General. The Council anticipated more extensive demands. Complexity rarely improves outcomes." "Admiral," Chen replied with the ghost of a smile. We've learned that lesson from our own history. Indeed. Zixter's form brightened. The Confederation accepts these terms without reservation. Reeves leaned forward. Just like that? No consultation with your council? I am empowered to accept any reasonable modification, Zixter explained. Your proposal falls well within those parameters. Chen nodded, satisfied. Then we have an agreement. The formal signing ceremony will take place on Earth. 1 week from today, all 17 Confederation representatives will be welcomed at United Nations headquarters in New York. As the details were finalized, Jake found himself standing beside Reeves near the viewport, both watching the proceedings with similar expressions of bemusement. A rancher from Montana, Jake mused. I'm still trying to understand your role in all this. Reeves smiled. Helena and I go back 30 years. We served together before I left the military. When this situation developed, she called and asked a simple question. How would you handle aliens who think they're superior, but keep getting outmaneuvered by ordinary humans? And your answer? Treat them like any other neighbor, with respect, but without fear. Show them how we really live, not just our military or government. Let them see that our strength comes from diversity of thought, not uniformity of procedure. Jake nodded slowly. Hence the karaoke and poker night. Exactly. Formal diplomacy has its place, but real understanding happens over card games and bad singing. Reeves chuckled. I hear Admiral Zixter is quite the poker player already. He's a quick study, Jake agreed. They all are. That's what makes this so interesting, and potentially so valuable. The formal alliance between Earth and the Galactic Confederation was signed with appropriate ceremony 1 week later. The event, broadcast live across both human media and Confederation communication networks, marked the beginning of a new era for both civilizations. As delegates dispersed to begin implementing the agreement's first phase, Captain Jake Morrison found himself once again on Liberty's observation deck, coffee in hand, watching the stars. Lieutenant Amy Carter joined him, her expression thoughtful. Hard to believe it's only been 4 months since they arrived, she remarked. Everything's changed. Jake nodded. And yet some things stay exactly the same. He raised his mug. Coffee's still hot, space is still cold, and bureaucracy is still bureaucracy, even with 17 alien species involved. Amy laughed. True, but now we have allies who can vaporize asteroids. In 15 minutes, Jake reminded her with a grin. Don't forget the charging time. They're getting faster. Engineer Clank 7 says Pete's redesign has cut it to 7 minutes. Progress. Jake took another sip of coffee. Speaking of progress, I've been offered a new assignment, liaison officer aboard the Eternal Dominion, during its goodwill tour of the Sol system. Amy's eyebrows rose. Are you taking it? Thinking about it. 6 months showing aliens the sights from Mercury to Pluto? Could be interesting. It could indeed. Admiral Zixter's resonant voice surprised them both. The crystalline being had approached silently, his form glowing softly in the dim light of the observation deck. Admiral, Jake greeted him, recovering quickly. Didn't realize you were still aboard. My departure is scheduled for tomorrow, Zixter explained. I wanted to personally extend the tour invitation. Your perspective would be invaluable. Jake studied the Admiral thoughtfully. You mean my irreverence and tendency to point out the obvious? Precisely. Zixter's form brightened with what Jake had come to recognize as amusement. The Confederation needs more of both qualities. In that case, how can I refuse? Jake raised his coffee mug in a toast. To new horizons and old habits. May they continue to collide in interesting ways. The Admiral's crystalline structure shimmered in response, his species equivalent of laughter. Well said, Captain. The universe will never be the same, thanks to a cup of coffee and a well-timed joke. As they stood watching Earth rotate slowly below them, a small object caught Jake's attention. A hybrid craft, part human shuttle, part alien technology, streaking toward the planet's surface. Its design was neither fully Earth nor fully Confederation, but something new entirely. The first of many, Zixter observed, following Jake's gaze. Already, our engineers cannot determine where human innovation ends and Confederation technology begins. That's the point, isn't it? Jake replied. The best alliances create something greater than the sum of their parts. Indeed. The Admiral's tone grew reflective. When our fleet arrived 4 months ago, we expected to find primitives cowering before our might. Instead, we discovered teachers. Jake smiled. And we found students eager to learn once they got over themselves. A fair assessment, Zixter conceded. Though I maintain that 15 minutes is a perfectly reasonable charging time for a weapon of that magnitude. Keep telling yourself that, Admiral, Jake laughed. Meanwhile, we'll keep our railguns ready, just in case. Their good-natured debate continued as Liberty Station orbited onward. Earth and its new alien allies, beginning a journey that would reshape the galaxy. One cup of coffee, one poker game, one karaoke night at a time. Far beyond the edge of the Sol system, another fleet dropped out of hyperspace, sleeker, faster, more efficient than the Confederation vessels that had preceded them. At their center, a massive command ship pulsed with energy signatures unlike anything seen before. On its bridge, a being neither crystalline nor humanoid observed the distant star that humans called the Sun. Its consciousness, distributed across multiple bodies, processed billions of calculations simultaneously. Curious, it communicated to itself. The Confederation fleet established contact 126 days ago. Their transmissions indicate alliance with primitives. The being considered this development, analyzing its implications across thousands of potential futures. Unexpected, it concluded. Investigation required. The fleet adjusted course, accelerating toward the inner system at speeds the Confederation's ships could never achieve. Humankind's next challenge approached, one that would test both their common sense and their new alliance in ways they could not yet imagine. But that, as Captain Jake Morrison might say, was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, there was coffee to drink, cards to play, and karaoke to endure. The universe would wait its turn. When the first alien fleet had appeared in Earth's sky, humanity had looked up in fear, then confusion, and finally amusement. When the second fleet arrived 6 months later, they looked up with confidence and a readiness to welcome new students to the growing Galactic Academy of Adaptive Innovation. The universe, it seemed, had much to learn from a species that valued simplicity over complexity, practicality over tradition, and a good cup of coffee over almost everything else.